Okay, so we schedule these sessions for our precinct because, and I'm going to just speak from my opinion. I feel like one of the downsides of our form of government is that we have incredibly low turnout to these May elections. And part of that is because people aren't aware of them. They don't understand the issues that are at stake. It's not November. It's not the first Tuesday in November. It's not Super Tuesday. It's not a senatorial primary. And so it's really incumbent on us not to just be in town meeting for our own enjoyment, but to be really trying to reach our precinct and trying to reach far beyond the people who are already familiar with the work of town meeting. So that's our intention in having sessions like this. I wish there were even more people on this call, but are we recording, Donna? We are recording. And so if there's anyone who doesn't want to be recorded, speak now and turn off your camera. And otherwise, we want to make this available as far and wide across the precinct as we can, and certainly beyond. Our format for tonight is to hear from candidates briefly, and to the extent that there are constituents who have specific questions, to have them have the chance to share, to introduce the 2 ballot questions. I also invited, as sort of a teaser for the future, for I guess next May, ideally, the Better Brookline people to have a chance to speak. So we'll see how this goes. As soon as I share screen, I'm going to spam out my big announcement. And if anyone else from the precinct wants to go on to Facebook and just say live now and put the link there, that might just drum up some business also. So with that said, since a bunch of our precinct reps are running, I'm not going to have you all introduce yourselves, but maybe for the folks who aren't running, we can just sort of introduce ourselves, say where we live in precinct 11 and something that matters to us about being on town meeting. And I'll start with myself. And I think I sort of already said, I've been in town meeting, I think about 7 or 8 years. I sort of lose track. And one of the things that's been really important to me as a town meeting member has been communication, rewriting the handbook and doing some surveying of what works and doesn't for town meeting members so we can think about how to improve it, and also thinking about how town meeting itself can be more inclusive. And that is sometimes a bumpy ride, but it's felt really important to me. And I'm going to pass the baton to Shauna to introduce herself.
And Jen, I think it's a great idea, but I also want to be very mindful of the select board candidates' time.
Yes, okay.
So maybe what we can do is we can capture this at the back end. Just
okay, sorry about
that.
Have our
so
names up there? I got center stage. I'm going to do this alphabetically. So maybe Miriam, let's start with you.
Thank you. Hi, and in full disclosure, Jen and I used to work together. That was a long time ago.
But it was really good work.
It was great work. It was really great work. So first I want to thank you for hosting this event. I want to thank, I always have to start off by thanking my campaign team because they're amazing. And I actually really find it, I want to thank you all for showing up, because I know the last thing we really want to do anymore is add another Zoom meeting to our list of things to do. And it's really important that you're engaged. And so I really appreciate, as voters in the town of Brookline, that you're here today. And I want to spend 2 seconds honoring all of the candidates who are running. We all have a clear commitment to public service, and I really think that's important to acknowledge. So I'm running for select board because I think we need real change in Brookline. We need a government that reflects our values with a clear lens on equity, good governance, and inclusivity. I'm running to bring that kind of change. I want to help Brookline to be more deliberate. What we need is a strategic plan, a clear vision for our town with outlined priorities and a budget aligned and reflective of our priorities. We need transparency and accountability built into our structures, and a strategic plan helps us do that. Most importantly, a strategic plan means we can create policy at the intersection of issues. And this is really something that really matters to me, which is, climate change is an equity issue. Affordable housing centers around inclusivity, accountability for policing, and public safety are at the core of good governance. These things don't happen in silos. All of these issues overlap and intersect, and we will do right to recognize that, capitalize it, and create a strategic plan with these overlays in mind. To that end, I believe a budget is a statement of our values and our priorities, and we must have a vision, budget, and strategic plan that align to reflect our values as a community. My professional expertise, as Jen knows, is in building programs, working with scarce resources, and building consensus in culturally diverse environments. This, coupled with my experience as a town meeting member, a parent of 2 kids of color in the Brookline public school system, a CPAC parent, community member, homeowner, prior renter. All of that makes me an ideal candidate for select board. I bring all of that expertise in operations and strategic thinking and all of that personal experience and love for Brookline to the job. And at heart, I'm a pragmatic optimist. So why should you vote for me? I have the skills to help Brookline develop and execute a strategic plan with a lens on good governance, equity, and inclusivity. I'm a progressive. I will champion and support progressive politics around climate change, affordable housing, support for seniors and youth, our schools and education, just to name a few. And I'm passionate about Brookline, and I'm eager to work diligently for this community so it can be the best it can be. Now, I only have 2 to 3 minutes, so I was very careful to time this. I have lots more to say. So if you want to hear more, then I would encourage you to come to one of the many house parties that we're having. You can go to my website, miriamforbrookline.com, and I'll put that in the chat. I have a detailed issues and policy page. You can learn more about me. You can request a mail-in ballot. You can get involved. You can donate. And you can find the events and come to a house party. Tommy Vitolo has interviewed me for his big show. I think he's going to do that for all the candidates. I believe April 15th is my on-air date. So you should feel free to tune in and watch that as well. And vote May 4th, one way or the other, vote. And then I think I've reached my 2.5 minutes. So.
Miriam, thank you. First of all, thank you for sharing your ideas and your enthusiasm, and thank you for staying on time. And I am going to turn, let's see, sorry, who's our next alphabetical person? I'm going to go with people who are here alphabetically, and then I'll go to the video. So Zoe, you are next.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. My name, thanks for being here, and I'm glad to see everyone, and I'll do my 2 minutes now. My name's Zoe. I'm a resident and renter. I live over on Tappan Street and Beacon, and I'm running for one of the 2 select board seats on the May 4th ballot. My professional training is cross-disciplinary in scope. It's in public administration, management, and environmental and social sciences, which I'll talk a little bit more about as we move along. I got my master's from the University of Michigan. It was a quadruple major in areas of environmental policy and justice, with a particular focus on climate mitigation, community-based planning, engagement, and change management. Some of you may know of me through my previous work on sustainability and climate for the town of Brookline. I currently work as the Assistant Director of Business Strategy and Operations for a biotech, a local biotech in the Boston Metro. A little bit about my background there. This collection of skills I just highlighted is actually a summary of what I like to describe as my skills, which is leadership in an area of management called wicked challenges. And I'm going to talk about that, and it's wicked, not in the form that you're thinking about. It's a term to describe very complex issues, ones that cross geopolitical boundaries, ones that are interrelated, tend to be very emotional, painful, very overwhelming. They often are controversial, these issues, because of how we move forward and how we address them isn't always clear, isn't always a single path forward. Climate change, poverty, our federal debt, the large plastic garbage patch in our ocean, COVID, terrorism, racism, these, the scale, their institutionalized inertia means we cannot manage wicked challenges with normal leadership and policy tools. In Brookline, to bring this back home, we're part of a regional housing crisis, and we're not meeting our own affordable housing needs. This is a wicked challenge. We're part of a climate crisis, a global climate crisis, another wicked challenge. And we continue to confront very painful issues around racism, another wicked challenge. Connected to our ability to solve those 3 challenges and to be effective and address these challenges is the fact that we're facing growing demand on our town resources, staff, and finances, and that we have a structural deficit. When you project out, our expenses are less than our projected, higher than our projected revenue over time, and that deficit's growing. And in many places, we could do a much better job caring for others, our most vulnerable, our seniors, people with disabilities, our public servants. or that is being inclusive of everyone. These challenges, these three wicked challenges and these other very important issues require strategic, inclusive, and collaborative leadership. That's how we've learned over time to solve these and move these forward in a very positive way. This type of leadership is what I do and what I would bring to the board. This form of leadership that I'm kind of describing quickly here focuses on facilitating community brainstorming and input at the front end, followed by coordinated executive action on as a second part. And it works on especially challenging issues, the ones that we're facing when there's a diversity of stakeholders, and it works within our town form of government, which is very cool. To make this work, we need to leverage all of Brookline's strengths, its talent, its energy, its commitment to and really make meaningful progress on these really big issues. We have seen this form of leadership work within our town government. We demonstrated it, we tested it with a climate strategy I led in 2019. These leadership skills, my training, my leadership skills that I've demonstrated in that space, but also my training in facilitating stakeholders with diverse opinions in the public sector, my cross-departmental and cross-committee work for the town, my understanding of the human and staff side of town hall. These skills, this knowledge, this is some of what I would bring to the board. Thank you for being here. I look forward to getting to know you, those of you that I don't know yet or haven't met, and working with you to make meaningful progress on these issues. We have a lot of work ahead. My website is votezoe4brookline.com, and I can also put it in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoe. And thank you for running. It is a big thing to take on. And I see Donnell is here too. Hi, Donnell, how are you?
Hi, Jen. Hi.
Good to see you. And please take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, peace be with all of you. Peace be with all of you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity briefly to let you know a little bit about us. I took a walk up Summit Ave.
Welcome to Precinct 11.
Earlier on today. Yeah, yes. And I mean, I love Summit Ave, even when I worked for the DPW, doing the trash pickup, the whole nine. So I'm asking for your vote on May 4th because I bring a unique, lived experience to the select board that the others don't have, and governmental as well. I've lived there 41 years, first Brookline, and I have a 16-year-old and a 6-year-old who are here. When elected, I would be the only select board member who grew up in this town, worked in this town, still lives in this town. That's just from this town. And we haven't had that since Ben Franco, is the last I remember. Well over a decade, I've volunteered many hours on committees and town meeting, and most recently on the advisory committee. I've noticed that Brookline, we haven't kept our promises like we say we're going to do as a community. We haven't used our executive powers that we have as select board members for real action on plans that we already had designed that would work now. For example, like gear, the town has tried, we're just not acting. It's a lack of action and it's frustrating. Especially when folks try to speak up and they're shut down, it's frustrating. So I feel the major problem we have here in town is that past advocacy. You can speak and say this is wrong, but then not to actually help fix the situation when you have that position to do so is unacceptable. When elected May 4th, I promise to keep those promises that we've said to folks over years and years and years and years in Brookline. There's a reason why people want some folks in town wants to become a city, because our executive branch is not doing what they're supposed to do for we the people. I'm gonna leave it at that. My phone number is 857-243-3602. Once again, that's 857-243-3602.
The
And my
Precinct
website
11 meeting member, Jonathan, is
Could you all please mute yourselves if you're not speaking? Thank you.
Sorry, Danelle. Start your phone number again.
no, my phone number is out there, but the website DONELLEONEAL.com. All right, and just call me. It's easier. The easiest way to get a hold of me, I'm get accessible is give me a phone call. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And
So unfortunately, I just want to say, I think that the select board members who are here might need to scoot within the next minute or two to get,
I was going to say,
onto
if
the
there
other
are any
forum.
quick questions you guys want to take, I'll switch to the videos, but we don't have to wait for the videos if anyone has any quick questions for Miriam or Janelle or Zoe, unless you guys have to go like right now, which may be the case.
No, we have, I think 10 minutes, 9 now, before we're supposed to be somewhere else. So I would be happy to take a question if anybody has anything. I'm sure the other Miriam and Janelle would be too. 9 minutes is a lot of time.
And we are not a million people. So if you have a question, just turn on your mic and I think feel free to ask. And
I have somebody in the BPO meeting telling me when they're getting close to the being finished with the next session.
Ken Lewis has a question. Yes, Ken?
The Brookline Fiscal Advisory Committee talked about in their 2020 report about a structural deficit that was already mentioned in the candidate's presentation. I just wondered how you each candidate felt. I know this is a difficult topic, but how you felt that the town needs to address that over the next several years.
Well, may I say something to that real quick? We can stop spending money over $130 on reimagining and reform committees, and then having the results go to the school department and housing. For one, it's been a pattern for a long time with and consultants. We pay for so many consultants to consult on matters that we should just take an action on. I think the talking so much has caused us a deficit. All right, thank you.
Other responses to that question? Miriam and then Zoe.
So thank you, Ken. That's a great question. BFAC actually made a total of 18 recommendations in order for the town to be more fiscally responsible. And they're really excellent recommendations. And I will highlight what I think are the top two, which is the first is that we actually need a financial strategic plan. And of course, I'm highlighting that because it aligns with what I'm saying, which is we need a strategic plan, and that includes a financial strategic plan. And part of that is we don't have any policy about how we put money in our rainy day fund. We don't really, we've kind of gotten a little bit lucky in continuing to have our AAA bond rating. So how do we look at that more critically to make sure we're not getting lucky and that we're really earning our AAA bond rating? So I actually just think we need to look carefully at all 18 of those recommendations and figure out which ones we can implement right away, which ones might take a little bit more time, which ones may not be implementable. I spent a lot of time with Mike Topol talking about this. Sorry, my dog is making an appearance. And that's so I think it's a great question. I think it's a really important part of the conversation.
Okay, I think I'll just lay out a few things real quick. So I'm just using my hands in our tiny little screen. So here's our structural deficit, and it's growing over time. We have two ways we can address it. One, bring down our expenses, or bring up our revenue. We have three ways we can really tackle revenue. One is fee-based programming. So fee-based programming often fills small gaps, but doesn't fill structural deficits. So it's an option, but it only will tweak a little bit. Another way to bring up revenue is property tax, commercial or residential, and that's an option. And you have your debt overrides that can fall into that group, and those can be planned out. Or the third one is your local receipts, like restaurants and hotel tax. And those are the places you can bring revenue up. You can also bring costs down, or you can do a strategic plan through all of those. What we have happening now is none of that is being planned or planned out in a way that's holistic. So the structural deficit keeps going out, and we use Band-Aid solutions to solve it. A strategic plan that would solve this, to get to, was it Ken's point? Question would be really doing some heavy community discussions up front, figuring out where we have viable spaces and community-based planning, and figuring out which spaces we can increase efficiency, bring up revenue, do economic development. And it's longer than we have time to get into today, but there's different avenues where we already have a lot of consensus, or we're merging towards consensus, and we should probably tackle those first. But we can't get to all that, so you'll have to come to another session.
Guys, thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Shauna.
I was going to say, I think that our select board candidates do need to get over to the BPO forum. So I want to say thank you to Miriam and Danelle and Zoe for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. And good luck at the next destination.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Appreciate you.
Keeping us on time. Bye.
And
Thank you. Bye.
And so our next candidates we're going to hear from are Val and Steve for school committee. But I'm just trying to think, I feel like I should run the videos for Bernard and Nancy, just to keep them kind of clumped with the select board candidates. Does that seem okay? I don't know if
Jen, can I just say, make a comment? So Stephen and I are not on at the BPO tonight. So if you want to run those and then do moderator, Stephen, if you're okay with that, we can also jump. So we don't have another place to be unless you do, Stephen. So
we're not busy.
Yeah. So
awesome. Okay.
We can be flexible.
And
I'm going to say that I don't think we should move around when moderator is scheduled for, because the moderator candidates are at BPO right now. So I think we'll still do school committee next, but let's go ahead and play the select board videos so we can keep those all together in everyone's mind, and then we'll go on to school committee and we'll put keep the moderator candidates toward the end.
Okay, sounds good. Hang on, let me find my videos here. I think, let's see. Sorry, I had them all queued up. Oh, here's Nancy. Okay, hang on, share screen. And here we go, and share sound. Sorry, you're getting the play. And
For those who don't know me, I have been involved in Brookline's municipal.
Sorry, wait, she starts here.
Good evening. As most of you know, I am Nancy Heller, running for re-election to the Select Board. For those who don't know me, I have been involved in Brookline's municipal governance since 1988 and in Brookline's civic life for many years before that. Please see my website, hellerforselectboard.com. In my 6 years on the Select Board, I've been engaged on many fronts to improve the quality of life for all Brookline residents. As co-chair of the Select Board Climate Action Committee, I was very involved in designing and implementing Brookline Green Electricity to provide residents with opportunities to use and promote renewable electrical energy. Currently, I'm working with Climate Action Brookline and Mothers Out Front to promote the program by urging residents to opt up to 100% renewable energy rather than the default rate of 30%. As co-chair of the BHS Expansion Advisory Committee, I've worked with Susan Wolf-Ditkoff and others as Brookline has assumed the complicated project of constructing a new high school building over the MBTA tracks. We are constructing a new STEM building, renovating the old science rooms, renovating the tired Tappan building into a state-of-the-art facility, renovating Cypress Field and playground, and improving the T station with much-needed accessibility upgrades. We have many challenges: successfully reopening our schools, restoring our local businesses to viability, recovering municipal resources for seniors, for racial justice and equity, for affordable housing, for our municipal services and parks, and successfully rebuilding the Driscoll and Pierce schools. And we must press forward as we seek a fossil fuel-free Brookline. These challenges need experienced town leaders to navigate our way through complicated municipal budgeting and who have the proven commitment and dedication to serve all residents, no matter age, gender, race, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status. I ask for your vote on May 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, now give me 1 sec to get over to, sorry. I'm going to stop share for 1 sec. Bernard's. I thought I had it right up. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry, back to share screen, back to Bernard Green, share sound, share.
Good evening, I am Bernard Green. Thank you for the opportunity to present this video on my candidacy for re-election to the Select Board. After 6 years on the board, the past 2 as chair, I am very proud of all we have accomplished for the town. When COVID was ravaging surrounding communities, we stepped up with aggressive actions and kept COVID infections among the lowest in the Commonwealth. When the COVID economic shutdown hit the town's budget, we found creative ways to provide additional support to vulnerable seniors and families. When national events put policing on every community's agenda, the Committee on Policing Reforms that I chaired developed recommendations that are now making new and significant improvements to policing in Brookline, continuing Brookline's more than 3 decades effort of rethinking and reimagining policing. And we kept our focus on the town's ongoing needs, financially supporting our schools, environmental action, smart growth, diversity and hiring, and racial justice and equity, housing opportunities for all, and fair and equitable policing so all residents and visitors can feel safe and protected. Now, I ask for your vote so I can continue to work hard and effectively on your behalf. Please visit my website at www.bernardgreen.com for more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. Okay, well, we can't ask questions of Nancy and Bernard, but we will. I'm pleased that they sent a video, each of them. And I think now we will switch over to Valerie and Steve, and E comes before F. So you can let us know if you go by Steve or Steven. And let's see, feel free to get started.
Thank you very much. And it's nice to meet you all on this precinct. I'm Stephen, and I'm a father of 2 girls at Lawrence. I'm running for school committee on the 1-year seat. What I want to tell you is I think that for many of us in Brookline, this last year has been a year of loss. And for students, those losses have been social, emotional, psychological, mental, as well as in education. And if you take anything away about me, it's that I think our chief responsibility this next year is to help our children recover from those losses and to thrive. So I think the work of recovery is twofold. First, I think we need to direct a large portion of the $34 million that Brookline is receiving in federal funds to programs that support students' reintegration into schools and that help them catch up academically. We can't leave them a year behind. We could staff up our counseling and our social work staffs, and we could subsidize our enrichment and our after-school programs. Second, I think we need to return to some of the meat and potatoes issues of education quality and access that we were focused on before the pandemic. PSB was renowned for the excellence of its education, producing graduates who are worldly, who are critical thinkers, and capable of meeting the challenges of their world. But our curricular offerings have narrowed. Literacy and math has crowded out 50% of social studies and science minutes in the elementary schools, and stimulating programs for gifted students have been slashed in the high school. I think we need to expand our offerings so that all students can discover their love of learning, and they all have an opportunity to find something in which to excel. Special education in Brookline is chronically under-resourced. This past year, I think our special education teachers were pressed into service as general education teachers, and in many cases, not replaced. We need to resource special education properly, and we need to pay paraprofessionals a living wage. My daughter has special needs, so there's no issue that's more personal for me. We must improve racial equity in our district. That means we need concrete and evidence-based proposals for supporting students of color, for recruiting candidates of color for leadership and central administration positions, but also for retaining educators of color, many of whom leave after they start. That's not long after they start, and this is urgent. Who am I? I've spent my career in education, and I design and direct education projects for global nonprofits. I have a doctorate in international education policy, and I've worked on education programs around the world from Afghanistan to Myanmar to Rwanda. I have a wide range of knowledge and familiarity with the nuts and bolts of education, from literacy programming to STEM to teacher support. And just as importantly, I know how to build coalitions from disparate groups. I think this is very relevant right now. Over the past year, our education community has become fractured and the conversation tense and angry. I want to rebuild trust, and I want to do it by promoting conversations on topics where teachers and parents and other community members have much in common. And I think that's most of education. Building broad coalitions is how I've succeeded in the past at creating educational change that lasts. So as a school committee member, I'll be a consensus builder, a problem solver, and a pragmatist in service of our common vision. And I thank you for listening to me tonight.
Thank you so much, Steve. And Val, you're up.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you to everyone from Precinct 11 who's here or who will watch the video later for hosting this forum and giving us an opportunity during a pandemic to get out in front of voters when that is an ever challenging proposition for those of us running. I'm Val Frias. I'm also running for the one-year school committee seat. I am the mom of two fifth graders, one of whom is at Driscoll. I was the Driscoll PTO co-chair for a couple of years. I just finished service on the Driscoll Principal Search Committee. I am the CPAC rep to Driscoll, as well as the out-of-district placements for the town of Brookline. I'm a civil rights litigator. In my history, I'm a nonprofit manager for the last decade, and I'm a progressive activist for the last 2+ decades of my life. I've done this at the local level here in Brookline, in Boston, surrounding communities, at the State House, and at the federal level. I've drafted policy and legislation. I've led ballot questions where I actually led coalitions of diverse bodies of folks from business to faith to grassroots leaders to successful efforts. I was a civil rights litigator and have litigated cases based on race discrimination, gender discrimination, sexual orientation discrimination, and age discrimination, and would bring all of that experience to the Brookline School Committee. My focus, though, is really on bringing an equity lens to all that we do. I call my platform the social determinants of learning. Most of you have heard about the social determinants of health, but I think that in order for our students to be able to show up, we need to make sure that all of our students have access to healthy housing, to a safe environment at school where they feel safe to show up and learn, that they are not food insecure, that they are not being discriminated against based on their race or their ability or disability, or their gender or sexual orientation, so that we have a welcoming and inclusive, diverse school system for all. I agree with Stephen that the pandemic has certainly laid bare many of the challenges that we faced pre-pandemic that still exist in terms of teaching time and collaborative learning and student-centered learning, and retaining and attracting diverse candidates for educators, and certainly paying our paraprofessionals a living wage so that they can actually stay in the job and enjoy the job and participate in a collaborative environment with our general educators and our special educators. I have two children with severe special needs. As I said, one of them's out of district. I know that system well. I am a CPAC board member and agree that it's under-resourced, but it's also not well known, I think, in terms of really how the collaborative time that's needed between our general educators and our special educators is not prioritized. And we really need to do that on the policy level. I believe in project-based learning and bringing back some of that project-based learning for our students. I think movement's important. I think that you can integrate ELA and science and social studies and weave those in so that we have cohesive lessons on historic racism, an anti-justice framework, and anti-racist framework for our education, on all of those intersections of language and history and science. I know I'm probably running up on time, but I also, as a practical matter, have run an organization with an almost $50 million budget that has complex financing in terms of federal, state, and local dollars in it. And I think at this time, as we look at American Rescue Plan funds, as well as state funds increasing under the Opportunities Act, I have the skills and the progressive values and the experience, again, at building coalitions here in Massachusetts, here in Brookline, to lead the school committee forward. Thanks.
Thank you. And Shauna, do we have time for any questions?
I think we have time for a couple of questions.
And does
Sure.
anybody have any questions? And Kate and Scott have arrived, just to let everyone know. Feel free to turn on your mic and ask a question or to raise your hand. Shira?
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for coming. I'm not even sure if this is under the control of the Brookline School Committee or this is sort of a broader question, but I'm curious about your thoughts about after school and access to more full day support for kids in Brookline. I think it's really important for working parents in general. I think, during the pandemic, the needs of kids during the day that are not provided by school came to a head. And I was just wondering if you had thoughts or ideas about the role that school could play in a more full day program.
I'm happy to start, Val, or unless you'd like to.
Go ahead. We can.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Shara. I think that that's a great opportunity for ARP funds right now, because I think after school programming is a way not just to reintegrate kids into a social and emotional environment that promotes their overall health, but it can help them recover some of their learning losses as well, because there's opportunity for learning there as well. So to me, that falls under the aegis of post-COVID recovery. And that's something that we could develop a concept note on right now, because we're probably gonna have to submit all this stuff to the legislature, the Brookline legislature, by June or July at the latest, right? So if we can get this going now, and if it's properly budgeted, this could be something that could be fully subsidized over the next 3 years by the town. I think that's a totally appropriate potential use of ARP funds. More broadly, accessibility to after school program, I think, is really important. And that's something that the school committee can promote in collaboration with the central administration. I'll stop there.
Hi, Sherry. Thanks for the question. As someone who works full time with 2 kids, I completely agree that the after school issue is always difficult. ARP funds are earmarked to a certain extent, so we could use them for learning loss for a short period of time, so up to about 3 years. I don't know that, quite frankly, that they would cover, when we're talking about a district our size, that they would cover all the needs that we're talking about. And they wouldn't necessarily cover the diversity and richness of experience that I would hope we would be able to have long-term for our students after school. And this goes again to that equity issue. There's a big, childcare discussion going on nationally about how we address this and looking at it universally in terms of our after school and aftercare programs and full day programs. I agree we could cover some of it in the short term. It would be about academic loss and some about social emotional loss, but in the long term, we need to advocate at the legislature and at US Congress to actually get funds to be able to support this fully for the long haul. And that's where I would focus my attention, quite frankly, is on that advocacy campaign, because you need to start yesterday to have that ability to do that in a couple of years. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. And I think to stay on schedule, we're not going to, Shauna, am I right? We're not going to take more questions now?
I would leave that up to everyone else. I did just tell the moderator candidates they could take a few minutes, but we do have other things on the schedule before that.
Well, let's put it this way. Are there any other burning questions? Hands raised or mics off? Anyone have anything?
No, I think we're safe to move on to the precinct 11 candidates.
Awesome.
Unless, oh wait, Anne, I just saw you unmuted. Do you have a question
I
for the school
did.
committee?
I was curious about your thoughts about the school resource officer or school resource officers and what your feeling is about keeping them or replacing them in the school system.
I can go first on this one, Steve, and I'm happy to. They have no place in our schools. They don't create a safer atmosphere. Our students have time and time again told us so, and they need to be out of the buildings. It's a full stop. We can use the funds to provide social work services, other counseling services, other supports that are drastically needed, but we don't need police officers in our school buildings. It disproportionately impacts students of color, language learners, disabled kids, and no study has shown that it actually makes anyone feel safer in the building.
Thank you. And Steve?
Yeah, there's no daylight between my position and Val's. I think SROs shouldn't be in the schools. I think it's worrying that they're teaching courses right now as well. I think there is, like Val said, no evidence base to show either that people feel safer or that they are safer because of SROs in the schools. And I think it's a low-hanging fruit. That's it.
Thank you. And thanks for the clarity. I am going to just pull up the screen to remind folks. So this is our current delegation of Precinct 11 town meeting members. And on this slide, you can see that we have several people who are up for re-election. I think 4, and then 2 people who are running new for the precinct. And I know the candidates will know exactly how many spots are. I guess there are 4 spots open for the 6 candidates. And
there are 5. We have one. We
right,
have
thank
one who is right. David Muscoye would have been on the
Muscoye
ballot.
is not continuing. So I think even though your names aren't alphabetical here, I'll invite you to speak in alphabetical order with the exception of Jacob, who sent a video, and so he'll go last. So I'll say it this way and you can hold me to it. So Shira, then Jonathan, David, David P, and then Ann. So I think you guys will remember that. And I should just say, I don't know who all is on the call, but just for a point of reference, the way our elections work for town meeting is, what do we have, 15 precinct representatives. And so about a third of us turn over each, I guess a third of us turn over each year unless someone leaves the precinct. And so this is, we see familiar faces come around triennially, and we also see new faces come in, which is great. So let's start with you, Shira.
Great, thanks so much. And thank you everybody for joining. I'm excited to be running for town meeting again. I've been serving this precinct since 2014, and you may also know me from the neighborhood email list, which I started a number of years ago in order to build community in our neighborhood. I'm committed to community, transparency, and democracy in our processes. I've been involved in Brookline for Everyone's efforts, which focuses on increasing housing availability and affordability, and they've endorsed me and many other candidates here in Precinct 11. I'm also involved in progressive town meeting groups to increase the focus on social and racial justice and equity. Issues I also particularly care about include our neighborhood's local needs like crosswalks and parks and services, education, and climate sustainability. Last town meeting, along with other town meeting members, including Nick McClelland, we passed a warrant article to explore ranked choice voting for Brookline, which is another way to increase diversity, decrease partisanship, and negative campaigning. Professionally, I'm trained in medicine and epidemiology, and I work in health policy. And personally, I grew up in Brookline. I'm a Brookline High alum, and so is my husband, and I'm now raising 3 children on the same playgrounds that I grew up on. I hope to continue to serve this precinct and ask for your vote on May 4th.
Thank you, Shira. And next up.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to all the Brookline town meeting members for this opportunity. I'm proud to live in a neighborhood that prioritizes community engagement in this way, and that's my top priority should I be elected as a town meeting member for Precinct 11. I've lived in Brookline for 22 years, 11 of those years as a renter at 101 Monmouth Street, and the past 11 years I've lived at 1450 Beacon Street in this Corey Hill neighborhood. And having the experiences of being a renter, a condo owner, but also a condo board member. I would bring all those experiences to think about the important issues of housing in the town of Brookline. I also stand before you as a parent, a Driscoll parent of a first grader, and I think the new Driscoll School is one of the most important projects we have before us and how it will unfold over the next few years. It would be my priority to continue community engagement to ensure all the needs of all stakeholders in that project, students, parents, educators, neighbors, are taken into account as we move forward with that important project. And finally, on the issue of community engagement, I got more involved in the town of Brookline last summer after the death of George Floyd, where I asked myself, what more could I do to be involved in my community and to raise diverse voices? And from that, I became involved in the Community Engagement Committee of the Commission on Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. And we have spent the past year working with town departments to think about how can they be more communicative with residents, take their input into account. And I'm looking forward to our goals for the coming year, which including that community input, reaching out to community organizations. And my charge is looking at the town website in ways in which it's become such an important resource in the time of COVID, how it could be more accessible, easy to read, and an important communication tool. So I look forward to working on community engagement should I be elected as a town meeting member, but in particular to communicate with all the residents and neighbors in Precinct 11. So I would appreciate your vote on May 4th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan. And David K. is next.
There we go. I am David Crewinghouse. I live on Westbourne Terrace, across the street from the school. Moved to Brookline not quite 6 years ago, and found the government inscrutable. And when a one year term thing came up last year, I thought, well, maybe I'll learn something about the town. And it's been super interesting and super challenging. And I was happy to work with Shira and Nicole on ranked choice voting. That was super exciting to me. And I'm professionally a web designer / developer, and was excited when Jonathan put out the call that like maybe we can work on the town website or help steer the town website. And I've gotten involved with progressive groups as well, and have been able to lend my skills to candidates for townwide office, and also for the Vote Yes on 2, the Community Preservation Act, which has been a super fun project to work on. So I'm running because it's been challenging, and there's exciting stuff that we can get done together. Thanks.
David P.
Good evening, everybody. Jen and Shauna, thank you again and again, because you bring us together and do the heavy lifting to support our precinct delegation, building this Corey Hill community through our delegation. And I think it's been really productive, and I think it's made us one of the really effective delegations in town meeting. I think getting together, talking with each other builds community. And that's sort of been at the heart of both my past town service and the town service I hope to continue into the future. I've lived in Brookline for 37 years and moved to Corey Hill 25 years ago, right when my oldest child started kindergarten at Driscoll. And that's where my community service started, with lots of volunteering in the school, which led me to lots of volunteering at town hall, and a whole variety of public service, and plus service on the Brookline Education Foundation board, which I'm very, very proud of. I'm an architect and community planner in my professional work, and I work for cities and towns. I work on community planning, and I work on public housing. And I really bring my values and an open mind to town meeting, and with the fundamental value of building our community, of strengthening our community through communication and collaboration and inclusivity, and making sure that there is a place for everyone in our community. And there's really a lot to do, and I'm willing to do it, and I enjoy doing it. Currently, I'm our precinct's representative on the advisory committee, which is a heavy lift. It's like 3 or 4 nights a week right now in town meeting season. And then through that, I've also taken the advisory committee seat on the Driscoll School Building Committee, which has just had one meeting since I rejoined it, and perhaps later I'll have an opportunity to fill you guys in on what's happening with Driscoll.
Is it me?
To you, Ann, yes.
Thank you. I'm bad at alphabetizing, I guess. So hi, everyone. I'm Ann Weaver. I've been a Brookline resident since 2008. My husband and I live on Mason Terrace. We have 2 kids currently in 9th and 10th grades at the Brookline High School. They both went to Driscoll. We moved to Brookline when they were, our son, who's the oldest of the 2 kids, was accepted into the BEEP program. So we've been here a while. I'm a psychotherapist, adjunct professor at BU, and researcher in both mental health and criminal justice related issues. My family's multiracial, and both overt and underlying racism toward people of color is an issue of deep importance to me. Before becoming a town meeting member last year, I was an advocate in town issues. One example being advocating for Gerald Alston in his ongoing civil rights lawsuit against the town. And I also in 2017 organized a successful petition to improve Brookline's sanctuary town policies. As a town meeting member, I've co-sponsored 2 warrant articles with Miriam and Scott on preventing the town from using taxpayer money to continue its legal appeals on firefighter Alston's racial discrimination case. Let's see what else. Oh, last summer I was selected to serve on the task force to reimagine policing, which is chaired by Raul Fernandez, select board member. As part of the task force, I've been co-chairing the effort to create an alternative crisis intervention community model to replace using Brookline Police to manage community member crisis issues. Other issues of importance to me include the impact of COVID on our town, financially, the impact on our kids and education, and of course, ongoing health concerns related to COVID and economic concerns, increasing affordable housing opportunities, expanding accountability in town government. I support establishing a charter commission to look more carefully and deeply into whether charter change might be a beneficial outcome in serving the needs of residents. And I just strongly believe we need new voices, fresh perspectives in town meeting and also with town moderator and in the select board in order to better represent all community members, increase resident voices and participation in town decisions. I hope to continue to contribute to these community discussions and engagement as your town meeting member, and I thank you all for your consideration.
Thank you so much, Ann. And before I run Jacob's video, I am just going to put in a plug, not knowing who all is on the call, that Precinct 11 is, I'm going to say unbiasedly, that we are the best precinct in terms of really being a cohesive team of people who are elected to represent our community. We meet routinely. We have incredibly well-informed members who in forums like this, which hopefully we'll do again before town meeting in May, people with great knowledge of warrant articles who bring informed opinions, but also recognize that agreement isn't universal. And that's unusual. Having those meetings is unusual, and having thoughtful and open discussions is not always usual in this town. So I feel not only lucky to be part of it, but that we are in a role to really be as helpful as possible to the people who live in our precinct. And a second plug is, if you happen to walk on Summit Avenue, there are beautiful purple flowers on Martha's front yard. And that's, we're a precinct, we're neighbors, so that's good to know too. And with that, I'm going to run Jacob's video and then we can have some questions. I'm going to suggest that we wait on the ballot questions until after the moderator candidates run. So let me just, Jacob's video. I had these all up and then they sort of hide on your screen, how that happens. Let's see. Sorry about that. Maybe, you know what, Shira, or rather Shauna, if there are any questions now before I run the video, maybe that's a good thing to do just so I don't waste time in the background.
Do we have any questions for the town meeting member candidates? All right. I do also want to give some credit to Sheriff Fisher, who is often a driving force behind these gatherings, who took a step back on this one because she's on the ballot and thought that might be a conflict of interest. But for those who wonder who's behind pulling these things together, Shira is also part of that team. If we don't, Jen, do you have the video up?
I'm good to go.
Okay, so let's see that video and then move on to the moderator candidates.
There he is. Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name.
Can you hear him? Could you hear him say my name is? I have a feeling when I did the share, I didn't click.
No, we could hear
It
him.
worked. It worked.
It was
You can put it
fine,
on, Jen.
Jen. It's fine.
You guys. Okay, sorry about that. Here we go again.
My name is Jacob. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Parati. I'm sorry I can't be there with you all this evening. I would love to represent Precinct 11 as a town meeting member. I'm a proud Brookline resident since 1988, when my family came here from Iran. We were welcomed into the community and I have been here ever since. I am an alumni of Coolidge School and Brookline High School, and I remained in Brookline throughout pursuing my undergraduate and graduate degree. I now happily live on York Terrace with my wife Sabrina and baby Zoe. I also am a part of a big, wonderful Persian family, many of whom also live in Brookline, and we remain grateful for the lives we have built here. Because of that, I want to give back to the community, to maintain what is good and improve what needs work. I have various policy areas of interest, including making Brookline more green, planting more trees to reduce carbon, and also creating green spaces for neighbors to congregate and get to know each other. I also support Brookline schools and teachers. They deserve our respect and support. Making sure that everyone is respectful of each other and our community is also a goal I wish to achieve. I also believe in responsible spending of our town's tax dollars. I promise to listen and think about the issues and give everybody an opportunity to have a voice. Jennifer asked for our views on the ballot initiatives. I would vote no on ballot question 1 and support continued election of the town clerk to make sure they continue to be accountable to the people of Brookline. I would also vote no on ballot question 2. Although I support open spaces, historic resources, and affordable housing, I would want to better understand the town's current use of funds before pursuing additional surcharges. As with all other topics, I remain open to your feedback and thoughts and working with you all to keep making Brookline a wonderful community for our families and our children. Thank you.
Move for Jacob!
Thank you.
Okay then. So no one else had a guest kid in their video or in their interview, but there was a cat. So we'll give you points for the cat, David. And I will point out also in our precinct delegation, what have we had? 5 Davids lately? David Pollock, Crewing House, Lascoier, and Lowe. Is there another David I'm missing? Or does that cover it? Okay, so apparently if your name is David, you have an advantage in this race. No, just not in an official way, just statistically. So I think with that, we will switch over to invite our moderator candidates to speak. And alphabetically, we will start with Scott and followed by Kate.
And
And
just,
thank you both for being here.
I
I
in the
did.
interest of, I was gonna say, in the interest of actually keeping time more accurately here, Jen, could you let me know how long it has? 3 minutes?
We had said 3 minutes and we're doing fine on time. You know, these are our last candidates to speak in that, I believe, and then we're switching to ballot questions and kind of open discussion.
All right, so I will ask Scott and Kate, I will ask each of you at the 3 minute point. I'll just send you a quick message that says, please wrap up in case you go over time.
And thanks to you both for juggling multiple, you've got very busy evenings, lots of dates.
And if Kate wants to go first, alphabetical order seems to be the common thing, and I'm worried that I'm going to go first in all of these if everyone just goes by alphabetical order. So if Kate would like to go first, I'm happy to see you.
Sure, that works for me. Thanks.
And we're happy to flip it. Thank you, Kate. Thanks, Scott.
Okay. Well, hold on a second. I'm getting myself ready. So this is the first time in 20 years that there's been a contested moderator's race. And it's the first time in Brookline's history that a woman is running. The stakes are high because the moderator shapes town meeting and its discussions. Any views I may have are irrelevant. The moderator must be objective and cannot have an agenda. For those who don't know me, I've lived here with my husband, Rafael Bueno, for almost 30 years. We've raised our 2 daughters here who went through the Brookline schools. I'm an attorney and a town meeting member, and I've served on the Zoning Board of Appeals for 5 years. This has given me experience in fairly and objectively presiding over hearings, some of which have been quite contentious. I think that experience is critical in this race. Moderating zoning board hearings, like moderating town meeting hearings, requires making sure that all voices are heard and respected. It involves making difficult decisions, even if they're unpopular. Town meeting has come under a lot of strain lately, and it has to address Brookline's issues with race and racism. The atmosphere has grown tense and at times uncivil, on the floor and online. That's why having the right town moderator is so important. The moderator sets the tone at town meeting and must instill confidence that the process is respectful, transparent, and unbiased. My goal is to restore a sense of common purpose in town meeting, a feeling of being one community with many voices. To increase the voices and opinions at town meeting, I plan to actively reach out to constituencies that are not always aware of opportunities to participate. These include parents and civic groups like Bridge and the Commission on Diversity. Reaching out is especially important when we seek people for committees where diverse skills and experiences are so critical. I'm going to encourage remote participation in town meeting and on committees, which will make it easier for people with caregiving responsibilities and mobility issues to participate. I'm going to encourage all voices to speak, not just the strong, experienced ones, but also the newer ones who sometimes need support and encouragement. People must be confident that their opinions will not be disrespected or discounted. A seat at the table isn't worth much if your voice is not heard. I'm not by nature a politician or, God knows, a policy wonk. And in this respect, I'm different from Scott, but it's also what makes me the right choice for moderator. Being moderator is all about being impartial and ensuring the integrity of the process. We can't have a moderator who promises to be progressive any more than we can have one who promises to be conservative. Both are problematic. I don't have an agenda, and I will make room for every viewpoint, whether it's on town meeting or making committee appointments. I'm running because I care deeply about Brookline and its many people and opinions. I'm committed to the strength of our public institutions. To fairly represent Brookline's people, these institutions have to be guided impartially with inclusion and equity. That's what makes them strong. That's what I want town meeting to be, and that's the ideal I want to live up to. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And Scott, you're up.
Wait, unmute. There you go. Hi, I'm Scott Ananian, and I'm running for town moderator because I believe in a town meeting which represents all of Brookline. So town meeting is a beautiful democratic institution. The vision of it is that everyone living in this town gets to make the laws and rules that we all live by in the town. It's not always lived up to that promise and that vision, but I am enthusiastic about the ability to keep bending that arc and and making town meeting truly representative of our town and empowering folks in our town to make a difference in our town. I've worked for nonprofits on collaborative software for most of my career. So today I work at the Wikimedia Foundation, which supports Wikipedia. There's a lot we can do to make town meeting run better when careful attention to good social process is facilitated with modern software. We can clear away the barriers to participation that are preventing folks from really having a meaningful impact and make our town meeting more accessible, more truly representative, more truly inclusive than it's ever been. I've brought 18 warrant articles through town meeting myself on climate change, on civil liberties, school funding. And I've learned a lot of lessons, some of them the hard way, but I've used that experience to help clear the path for others, to help others, over a dozen other folks with their articles, their ideas, working to ease their paths. And so my campaign for moderator continues that work in the service of others to help advance our town by empowering all of you, all of our town residents, to move the wheels of our system of government. And that's what I have been doing. So I know I can do it. I've been helping remove barriers to entry. I've been an ally when needed to ensure others are fully heard. And you can ask my endorsers. If the town gives me the opportunity in May, I will work as hard as I can to make town meeting work as best as it can for all of us. I'm Scott Nanian. I live here with my family. My kids and I walk to Driscoll every school day. I love this town. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to run for town moderator and serve Brookline. You know, my website is scottforbrookline.org. I've got lots more details and lots more ideas. You can find out about them there.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. And are there questions for the moderator candidates?
We're too boring.
Ken, why don't you ask? I too have a question, but I can go last. Ken Lewis, please ask away.
One observation I make about town meeting is that we don't spend we spend a disproportionate amount of time. Sometimes it seems like on non-binding resolutions, but inadequate time on some maybe technical and less interesting or less debatable issues like the town's unfunded pension obligations and some other things that seem to get skipped over and or given very little time allocations. I just wondered if you had a sense of how, as moderator, you might address the allocation of time in proportion to the what I guess I would just call the importance or the weight of the issues involved.
Okay, I'll jump in. Sorry,
sure, go
ahead. Anyway, it's really not up to the moderator to determine that. And it depends on how many questions are asked, how many people want to speak, how well the issues are addressed by the advisory committee often, and how satisfied people are with those answers. My very personal view is that resolutions are not necessarily the best way for town meeting to spend its time, but I believe it is part of the bylaw and maybe even the state requirements for town meetings. But the people basically determine how much time is spent on issues.
So I'll give a two-part answer there. One is when I help folks with their ideas for something to do in town. I usually explain that there's three basic types of warrant articles. There's resolutions, there's bylaw changes, and there's zoning bylaw changes. Most of the time, when folks come with a vague idea, a resolution is actually the right first step for them. If they have the idea that we should be spending money on something, but not an exact amount that they're willing to change the budget for, a resolution helps to validate that this is something that the town as a whole prioritizes and to assess its priorities. The immediate reaction is often, oh no, like I don't want to do something non-binding, but there's a lot of useful things which have been done with non-binding resolutions in town. And I could list you a number of my warrant articles, starting with one of my first ones, which was an EV charging warrant article, which ended up being referred to a study committee, which then spent 2 years doing great things for the town. Linda Pelsky was chair of that. So resolutions can be the right vehicle. I'll say it's a matter of what you're trying to do. But the real answer, the sort of second part of my answer, is that I think the solution is to extend the process of town meeting. I've been talking to folks about doing this at the high school level as well. We have high schoolers participate in town meeting, but they come in at the very end at the debate. And by the time we're at debate, a lot of the important work, and as you noted, most of the important budget items have already been set in stone by an advisory committee process, by town staff, by a long drawn out process. That town meeting process needs to start earlier, right? We all need to be following these articles from the beginning of the budget cycle, from the beginning of the warrant deadline, so that we're not spending very little time at town meeting over hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then spending huge amounts of time on resolutions at the end, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Are there other questions? So I'm gonna change hats and be a questioner then. So our experience of town meeting has been consistent for 28 years. The experience we have is the vision of the current moderator. And I'd be really interested from each of you, what's one thing that you would do that would change town meeting? And I'm gonna put out a few examples. There are many towns that have assistant moderators so that it's not such a unilateral position. There are opportunities to facilitate education in an unofficial way, to have monthly meetings, to present in-depth introductions to issues so town meeting members have equal access to being informed on topics. There are ways of being inclusive. There's going to bat to make sure that we keep a virtual environment well after COVID. Are any of those or other ideas on part of your candidacy? And let's see, I think Kate went first last time, so Scott this time, is that the order? Okay.
Sure, I'll try to be very brief. Yeah, all those things sound like good ideas. And I've advocated for many of them myself. I'll say, I think continuity is actually important. I don't expect to see a lot of changes in this May's town meeting. This is the first new moderator we've had in 20 years. And so I think, the first priority is to keep the ship running, right? But that said, I've certainly offered in public to appoint assistant and deputy moderators. I think that's a very sound role to increase the depth of experience in town with that important position, so that we're not caught shorthanded if heaven forfend anything happened to our current moderator. Remote learning or remote experiences in Zoom have been fantastic. I've been talking to moderators in other towns, as well as Joe Ross, who remembers some of the ways that Brookline town meeting has been. And I'll throw out one idea you didn't mention, which is it used to be back in the Justin Weiner days that town residents who are not town meeting members had a microphone of their own in the back of the hall. And so that rather than being always put at the very back of the list, they could sign up. They obviously didn't have priority over town meeting members, but the moderator, when appropriate situations arose, would call on folks from the back of the room, residents of our town who had something to contribute. I thought that was that's a past tradition of Brookline. I thought that was something that would certainly be interesting to explore here again.
Thank you. And Kate.
Okay, I do have a couple of ideas. I do think that remote participation is really valuable. I think that we have to wait for the governor to decide to extend it after the emergency provisions for it are over, especially for subcommittees. I think that in terms of the monthly meetings, that's great, but people can also inform themselves by connecting with the subcommittee meetings that go on with the advisory committee, in terms of following the process of the analysis of warrant articles as they come forward. I don't think town meeting members have always been thrilled about the idea of sort of lessons. I think that the idea of financial presentations and learning was not very well received last time. I think the idea of affiliated moderators is not a bad one. There can only be one moderator who can participate in the Massachusetts Moderators Association at a time, but I think that it is not a bad idea to have backup. There's going to be a steep learning curve for any new moderator, and I think that having someone in the dugout, as it were, would always be a good idea.
Okay. Any other questions for the moderator candidate? Well, thank you for taking the time. I know you guys have a lot of stops to make. Our remaining agenda is to talk about the ballot questions and to hear from the Better Brookline team. And I think on the ballot questions, Precinct 11 folks, can you remind me who is speaking on ballot question 2? And I did put these up. Let's see, hang on one second. I have them here. So ballot question 1, I am happy to just sort of describe a little bit about this one. And then I know there's someone who's going to talk about ballot question 2. And then I'm sorry, I also misspoke. David Pollock is also going to give us an update on the Driscoll Building Committee. So I think we can cover all of that in the next few minutes. This one certainly is very quick. So this question is whether the town clerk, which is currently an elected position, should be hired by the town through the select board. And this might seem sort of like very different than the other question. You can see the length of the question is much shorter. For folks who are on the line, I'm just going to give a little bit of background. This is a position that's historically been elected every 3 years. As such, it's the only director position in the town that doesn't have traditional performance review or goal setting the way that most jobs would have. And when our current clerk became ill and we have had a consulting clerk come in, it was really evident that we were not state of the art, and at a time when voting rights are really under attack nationally, not to be at the cutting edge of best practices, it seems ill-suited. And I can certainly say, and I vote in these May elections routinely, I don't have any criteria to judge the clerk's performance on other than he's a nice guy. I don't consider that personally to be a very valuable way to judge. And having looked at the voter turnout for the May elections over the past 20 years, the triennial elections, the turnout is typically between 20 and 30%, and typically a third of the votes for the town clerk position are left unmarked. So even with a low turnout, the turnout and votes for that position are far lower. So I obviously have a bias on this one, but that's a little bit of the history. The alternative is we keep electing someone who doesn't have traditional performance reviews, and others can weigh in on this, but that's kind of a little bit of data and a little bit of opinion. Okay, met with the silence of...
So we have somebody who was going to present the other side on that issue.
I don't know if anyone else was going to talk about that issue, but others can. I mean, I can tell you what the other side is saying, which is it's a democratic process, and we elect a lot of positions. Why not this one? Why is this one different from all other positions that we elect?
Right. So, I mean, I would say that I had not prepared a statement for the other side, but I do think that the main thrust of that argument is a question of accountability to everyone in town, in the same way that we we do elect many other positions. We elect select board members. We clearly will be electing the next moderator, which is also supposed to be a, shall we say, neutral position. And there are people who like to have that level of accountability for the town clerk as well. I don't know that anyone has anything else to chime in on this particular issue. I hadn't prepped anything.
I mean,
it's a little confusing also because isn't there a vote for the town clerk and there's a vote for whether or not the town clerk will be appointed. So just to be clear that it's operating a certain way on this one, independent of the question. And then once the question is answered, then it will change or not.
Yes, and so it is confusing, and yes, so it's, your vote is your own, and those are two perspectives. And can you guys remind me who's speaking on question 2? I had thought it was David Lescovier.
Yeah, that was what was published, it was going to be David, but I didn't see him I didn't see him in the participants.
No, I don't see him here. I don't know, Rebecca, can I put you on the spot? Is this something you want to speak to? I don't know if she's... right at her computer. I feel like this is an important topic to address, but I certainly am not informed in a way to speak to this question.
Can we get an update on from David Pollock in the meantime, and I'll see if I can find Becca.
Okay, sounds good. So the Driscoll update.
Right, so I'll just give a quick report because again, I've only been on the Driscoll School Building Committee for for one meeting. On the other hand, I have a lot of background and sort of humorously, I was actually appointed to the Driscoll School Building Committee in 1999 and served on it for 5 years, but that was a different iteration, and that was a renovation, not this this major project. So we had a big presentation from the professional team a week and a half ago, and they basically brought the news that they had opened 2 sets of bids. One are the actual the filed sub-bids, the trade bids, which are, according to the law, structural bids that are kind of fixed for certain trades like electrical and mechanical and ceramic tile and a bunch of other things. But then the contractor, the construction manager, Gil Bain, had also been asked to reach out to all of the non-filed trade bids, which don't have to be bid the same way and aren't final, to get real numbers so that there could be a real number for the project. And that real number in the last iteration had gone up by between $5 and $6 million. They were managing at about $1 million over budget or something, and now all of a sudden they were about $6 million over budget. So that's because of what's happening with the construction bidding climate, which is, they said was, they don't feel that it's basically a labor issue, it's a commodities issue, it's a supply chain issue globally. I've heard, again, because I'm an architect, this is what I do, that construction lumber prices have almost doubled in the last 12 months. And there are a number of other elements that just the cost has been going up. However, the budget that was provided by town meeting is not going up. And they expressed their firm commitment to bring the project in both on budget and on time, which is a challenge because when you're having to scurry to adjust to do value engineering, to cut things from the scope with very little time before construction start, which is as soon as school lets out, it's a lot of hard work. So they had created a long list of value engineering options, which everyone asserted did not affect program. It doesn't affect educational program and doesn't affect the plans for the building. And so some of the big elements were, the most troubling one for the architects in terms of having to scurry around and change a lot of drawings was they wanted to lower the floor to floor heights by 8 inches on each of the upper 3 floors to take 2 feet out of the whole height of the building, which they said would save a ton of money. And then there was a long, Nancy O'Connor from the Parks Board was very concerned about not gutting the playgrounds and the landscape. And there were assurances that there might be some changes in the density of the number of shrubs and things like that, but they weren't changing the landscape program either. I don't know if you've ever looked carefully at the Florida Rough and Ridley School, but there are sunshades. There are these horizontal fins on the windows on the Harvard Street side, because that's the late afternoon sun, and the south side or the Babcock Street side. So we're going to lose some of those kind of sunshades and trellises and, a lot of aesthetic. They're looking at aesthetic changes, but anyway, they were committed to overshooting that $6 million and to try to see if they could cut 7 or 8 because of concerns that the costs are still going up. And they were going to try to make all these changes in the next 2 weeks, meaning wrapping up by the middle of this coming week. And then they were going to get some new pricing and try to stay right on schedule. So that's the news from Lake Wobegon.
Thank you, David. And I think it's going to be really important. I know there are a lot of ways people can catch up on information about the Driscoll building, but for us as Precinct 11 members to think about maybe doing some reporting out, or if the committee itself is doing some formal, plan for communication. I want to time travel a little bit and leapfrog over question 2 and invite the folks from A Better Brookline who are working on a ballot question for next May to talk about their work. And you guys, hopefully about 2 minutes will do. And I will say these are probably the 2 youngest constituents on our call, but by no means the least engaged. They're really amazing. Regardless of what you think about A Better Brookline, these guys are making things happen. So take it away, you guys.
Well, thank you so much for that little introduction, Jen. We really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. I'm Ronnie England. I'm one of the co-founders and co-directors of A Better Brookline, and I'm here with Sam Winnikoff. I don't know if you want to wave so people, yeah. And he's also one of the co-directors. So A Better Brookline is a community-based grassroots organization working towards ultimately making Brookline a city. And right now we are collecting signatures to get a question on the ballot, like Jen said, not this May, next May. That would essentially ask voters whether or not they want a charter commission to be formed to examine Brookline's government and propose a charter, because we currently do not have one. So this process obviously involves the formation of an elected commission as well as a second referendum. So voters will have a chance to vote on that proposed charter. And this petition alone will not make Brookline a city, but will simply begin the process and give voters that chance to kind of engage in the possibility and the conversation. So that was just a little spiel. Please ask away any questions that you have about this process. But if you want any additional information, it's all up on our website, abetterbrookline.org. I think Sam is going to put that in the chat for you guys. And if you want to email us personally, the email is abetterbrookline@gmail.com. And if you'd like to sign our petition, we usually collect signatures on weekends with the locations and times on our website. So yeah, that was just a quick overview. And now we have time for questions, I'm assuming.
And I'm going to throw you a softball question. What motivated you guys to get started doing this?
Yeah, Sam, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I can jump in. So I think our motivation for this was really getting involved first with town politics and witnessing the way that our current system works. And, I have to say, on this call full of people who have dedicated so much of their time and their resources to the town, that we're really grateful for everything that people who are town meeting members and serve on the boards and committees do. But I think that observing the way that our government works right now really led us to witness some of the structural issues with operating like, basically like a old New England town when we're right next to Boston. We have a population of 60,000. And it's really led us to believe that it's time for an update to the way that we do things and to create a structure that will bring more people into the fold, that requires potentially less energy and less time just to understand what's going on. Because it's great if you're retired, or maybe you have job security, or you're a grandparent and you can devote your time to town meeting, but maybe you're a single parent, or maybe you work 2 jobs, maybe you're a renter. There's a lot of people who really don't have the capacity to engage, and that's not what makes for good local government.
Thank you. And Ken Lewis, question from you.
Yes, is there a municipality that's gone through this process that you look at as serving as a particularly good example?
Yeah, so we have actually been in contact with Framingham. I think they're the most recent city that changed from a town to a city in Massachusetts. They were previously actually the largest town. Now we hold that title in Massachusetts. And we've been in contact with their group. It's called Framingham First. If you want to look into that, they sort of gave us some advice when we were starting out with this process, which was really valuable. So yeah.
Thank you. And any other questions? Okay. Thanks so much for coming, you guys. And we are going to pivot back to the present to question 2, and Rebecca Montner from the Precinct 11 delegation will speak on this question. Oh, you're on mute, as they say.
Great. So I can give a very quick overview. Looking at who is still on the call, I suspect most people who are on the call are actually pretty familiar with the Cpa Community Preservation Act. So I'm going to be very brief, and I'm happy to talk longer to anyone who's interested, but it is already, past 8:30. So Community Preservation Act is a regulatory framework and taxing framework that's in place in quite a few municipalities across the Commonwealth. And it basically is a small transfer tax, and the funds have to be used 10% for open space, 10% for historic preservation, 10% for affordable housing, and the town committee that will distribute the funds has discretion on the other 70% to allocate them among those three uses. So in some communities, it's used mostly for open space, for others, mostly for affordable housing. And there have been a variety of projects that have been funded across the Commonwealth. Whoops. There is a match provided by the state. The amount of the match varies. It was very, very robust when this started. It's a little less now, but it is significant. It is significant. It's a way of kind of any revenue we collect gets increased by what the state contributes. So that's the thumbnail version. I'm happy to go into a lot more detail, but I'll just pause there and see if anyone has any questions about it.
I think one thing that's important is the range, and that town meeting voted to promote a 1% going on the ballot, and it could have been up as high as 3%.
Right. And I think any disbursements of CPA funds actually do have to get approved by town meeting ultimately. They usually submitted kind of as a package, but sort of like the capital budget. It's sort of like how we approve the capital budget, and I've worked with CPA funds in other towns. It's a really interesting process to have town meeting vote on specific projects.
Doesn't it also have to get, I mean, I think they have to present it to the select board. The committee puts it together, but the select board also owns it, and then it goes.
Town meeting is the last stop. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And any other questions on this question? So I think that brings us to the end of our meeting, and so appreciative for those of you who have stuck it out for the full hour and a half, and all of the people who have spoken. I regret that we didn't take the time to go around and have people introduce each other, but I don't think it was realistic given the number of people here. But I will say this, and I'm going to go back to my shared screen for one moment. Find it. Here we go. There are a lot of ways to find the names of the folks who are the Precinct 11 representatives, but I have all of us listed here. And if you received the email from me that announced this meeting, all of our email addresses were at the bottom of that email as well. And for those who are on the call still who are not town meeting members, please feel free to reach out to us with any questions or issues. I can tell you, in addition to sort of the formality of town meeting and the warrant articles, there are a lot of ways that we can help and advocate as issues arise. And certainly, as Shauna pointed out, Shira has been really instrumental in trying to create broader communication. Nick McClellan and David Lowe were really instrumental in creating a Corey Hill Day up at the top of the hill about a year and a half ago before we wore masks, planting bulbs and cleaning up the park. And we're blessed to be in this lovely slice of Brookline that has a beautiful park and a great community, and also great representatives who want to continue to make the town as strong as it can be. So I will leave it there.
Can I ask David a quick question following up on the Driscoll? You mentioned how we're in an unusual environment with regard to certain materials costs, but it seems like the flip side of that, we're also in an unusual environment in terms of interest costs. I just wondered if you had a feel for how the interest savings, as it was, I believe in the high school, we had an overrun in actual costs, but the total annual cost and the debt service costs are actually going to be less than because the interest differential offset the materials cost. Do you have a similar situation? Do we see a similar situation coming up with Driscoll?
It didn't come up in the meeting, so like nothing was shared with the committee. It's my understanding, and maybe everybody else has the same. This is not unique information, but that interest rates have risen. Maybe 4/10 or 0.5% from the lows, but that they're still very favorable. And so I think that it's a very expensive project, over $115 million is what we voted at town meeting as a budget. And but that I think that that it's still, in terms of the burden on the taxpayers, we're in a historically low interest climate still. I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for.
No, yeah, I think that offset, because both of them are unusual conditions, and I think we're fortunate that one is offsetting the other.
Yeah, of course, the borrowing for Driscoll will come as the money is spent. So, it's off in the future. But certainly for the high school, the borrowing was very, very advantageous.
We're way over schedule, so I'm going to say good night.
Let's all. I mean, he's not here, but let's all give a shout out for David Lescoyer. I know we're all thinking.
Here.
Our thoughts are with him, and our hearts and everything.
And we will properly celebrate him in the sunshine, hopefully in the months ahead when we are all vaccinated. And
Here.
That sounds really good. He's been such a force and so generous with his time and talents.
100%.
Just have a retirement event for him, or
well, I hope he does one of those retirements like the NFL quarterbacks who retire and then come back 2 years later and they're like, I didn't really mean it. So we can celebrate his retirement as long as we know he's going to return. Shauna, you're on mute.
No, I was going to say, okay, let's wrap it up so that those who do want to go home or go off Zoom can do so, and we can close out this recording as well.
Hey, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.